Hey everyone, it's Ben Shakini, founder of Give and Grow, here with another episode of the Give and Grow podcast. For those of you new to the channel, new to the show, this is our social emotional learning series. This is for parents and teachers to get to know a little bit more about social emotional learning so we can support our kids' mental health, emotional health, and just overall health and well being. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you guys to Cobi Campbell. Cobi is from out in San Diego County, California. She's a social worker and school counselor, and also has some experience in her personal life with special needs and caring for special needs people. So, Kobe, super excited to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's go ahead. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. I'm really excited to learn because I actually know nothing about this first topic of discussion that we have today, the positive discipline parenting method. Positive discipline parenting method. Can you tell us what that is, why you're passionate about it?
Yeah, so about 5 or 6 years ago, I was invited to a training for positive discipline parenting method, and what really spoke to me about it was it's a connection-based method. So I think we're all used to, or many of us are used to, sort of a top-down method of parenting, and many of us probably have heard of the three different styles of parenting. This is very much involving the kids with um, what the family wants to feel like, involving them in decision making, even about consequences. So it evolved from the work of two Viennese psychiatrists, Rudolf Dreikurs and Alfred Adler, who really focused on the fact that people, but in specific children too, um, look for belonging and significance. And so their idea was that a misbehaving child was looking for that belonging and significance, but in a misguided way. So that sort of shifted the paradigm and turned it on its head in terms of how we approach those things. Misbehavior and discipline in particular, moving away from punishment to more of a connection-based, validation, respectful, method of parenting. So it's based on mutual respect. And one of the biggest tenets is kind and firm at the same time.
Mm,
So kind out of respect for the child, but then firm out of respect for ourselves and the demands of the situation. They're not getting away with anything. We're holding them accountable in a kind and firm way. Um,
mm,
so let me think what else I want to say. So it's about teaching kids important life skills that we want them to know, like empathy, respect, decision making, responsible decision making, and problem solving, so that not just now are we having a smoother, less crunchy family life, but
mhm,
also in the future, we're teaching them those things that we want them to know for the rest of their life, the workforce, relationships, and things like that. So moving away from punishment, because often we get with punishment um, some R's, rebellion,
mhm,
retreat, resentment, those
mm.
kinds of things. And that breaks the connection with the parent or the caregiver, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Definitely. Thank you so much for breaking that down. I'm excited to continue to like peel layers back. I already feel like, ooh, where's this gonna go here? Because yeah, it sounds like a beautiful approach to parenting. I love the cohesiveness, the
Mhm.
connection, the empowerment of the child. Um, the thing that popped up for me as you're sharing is around, you know, shifting out of the paradigm of punishment and
Mhm.
into what does that look like, if there is a kid that is misbehaving. I love how you kind of specified that it's like misguided,
Yeah.
seeking out certain needs. Yeah, what's the
So
alternative? How do you approach that?
the alternative is being a detective and figuring out what is behind that behavior. Is it a need for attention? Is it a need for power and control? Is it an assumed inadequacy, like, oh, I can't do it, so just give up on me anyway? Or
Mm,
is it revenge? And the interesting thing about the misguided um, goals is that how we figure that out is based on how we feel and how we react, and
mm,
then how the child reacts as well. So we're becoming a detective, we're validating their feelings, we're kind of in it knee deep together, if that makes
mhm,
sense.
mhm.
So it's a together with approach versus a top down. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it- we're validating their experience. That's the alternative.
Mhm.
And sometimes parents will think that that is condoning behavior, and those two are separate things. We're
Yeah.
not condoning behavior, but we are validating the feeling.
Mhm.
And if we don't do that, and they don't feel seen and heard, that belonging and significance drive that they have, then they're likely to let us know just exactly how valid it is for them, right? How big a deal
Right.
it is for them. So if we're saying things like, oh, it's not that big a deal, you don't need to worry about that, just stop it. They're going to let us know how big a deal it is for us or for
Mm,
them. And it makes the situation bigger than it has to be. But if we validate, then they feel seen and feel heard. And that alone can tend to shrink the intensity
mm,
of the feeling because they're like, okay, they get it. They get it. And
mm.
then you can start to problem solve.
I love this already. I didn't
Yeah.
tell you this. The podcast might know if they've watched a couple other episodes. I'm heading into parenthood for the first time. My wife's about
Yay.
3 months pregnant at this point in time, so super excited to be learning this
Yeah.
and bringing in this information with all of those things in mind. And
Yeah.
as you're sharing around the validation and just how that can help quiet things down. Obviously, I don't have experience with a child doing that, my own child doing that, but internally approaching those challenging emotions coming up with a validation, it's like, oh, like they aren't fighting back, they aren't getting louder, they're like, okay, I was heard, that's what I wanted,
Yeah.
and another thing that I just want to highlight that you shared that really stood out to me was the fact that there's a need behind the behavior. And
Hmm.
obviously, if it's a unpleasant or a undesirable, I'm what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say,
A negative feeling
behavior,
and negative behavior. Yeah.
exactly, then there's something that's not being met behind that. And so I love the lens of the detective, right?
Yeah.
What is that thing? Because the kid doesn't know. If they did,
Mm.
they would be able to get that need met, or maybe they don't know how to get that need met yet. So
Yeah.
I
So
love
then you
that.
can draw them in and start to problem solve together.
Mm,
And I forgot to mention that Dr. Jane Nelson is the author of the method. It's based on the two Viennese psychiatrists, but she is the author of the method. And a lot of part of it is to have family meetings so that you're meeting
mm,
regularly and the children have a voice and choice in the different types of things that are going on and how the family wants to feel, right? And
mm,
so then also accountability because you've been involved in the process. I mean, think about
mm.
us as adults. We're much more likely to take accountability if we've been involved in the process. The same goes for kids. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm lit up with this conversation right now. I really appreciate you breaking these
Yeah.
some of these things down. So let's go into like a scenario, right? If a kid's feeling specifically like frustration or anger, obviously it can be one emotion that can be uncomfortable to deal with, especially if we don't have a lot of experience or weren't taught the healthy ways to kind of navigate that. Say the family's in that sort of situation where the kid's feeling frustrated or angry,
Yeah.
what would be the positive discipline parenting approach?
The number one thing I think across the board, whether or not you're, using the positive discipline approaches to regulate yourself first.
Mm,
Number one, because there's research around mirror neurons, which are cells in the brain that not only get activated when we're doing something, but when we're seeing something done. So when our
mm,
kid starts to lose it, we want to lose it too. It's harder to regulate ourselves. So if we can learn and use those strategies to regulate ourselves first, the opposite goes as well. They see us regulating,
mm,
those cells in them want to activate as well. So then we are co-regulating with them. So
mhm.
that's, a big part of it is
Huge.
keeping ourselves or getting ourselves calm first and then co-regulating with them. As long as they're not too far gone on the escalation cycle, you might be able to pull them in. I mean, and ask, do you want to do some breathing with me? Let's do a breathing
Mhm.
exercise. There's tons of breathing exercises that are interesting to kids. I hear about a new one every time I go into a class
Yeah.
lesson. They're so creative. And so sometimes you'll be able to pull them in during that time to breathing with you. They might say no, and that's okay. Keep breathing
Mhm.
yourself, keep regulating yourself. You might notice that that intensity decreases, and then you can offer again, or they might just naturally start doing it with you.
Mhm.
It's not magic. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
they're too far gone and it won't work, but
Mhm.
it's always a good first step to regulate yourself. And, even if you have to kind of ride out that anger and
Yeah.
frustration and all of that, you're at least feeling calmer to handle it when
Mm.
they're ready to handle it. So that's kind of the number one thing.
Yeah.
And the validation we talked about, that
Yeah.
so regulating yourself, co-regulating with them, and then validating the feeling with
Yeah.
them.
Beautiful. And I really appreciate you bringing in the mirror neurons. I hadn't heard of it in that
Mhm.
situation before of
Yeah.
obviously like we're regulating, they're seeing that those neurons are firing. I always heard it in like a sports context.
Hmm.
Like the more somebody's like watching the sport and then actively practicing it, they're able to kind of trigger some of those same mirror neurons while just
Hmm.
watching the sport. So it's for all my parents of athletes out there, or athletes ourselves, like this is it's a cool weave. It's
Yeah.
benefiting all those areas. So I appreciate
Absolutely. And
you
if I
bringing
can
that
just
in.
add too, the more kids are practicing and visualizing themselves in a heightened situation, being able to calm down, any sort of mindfulness practice that parents can sort of incorporate at bedtime, practicing those calming strategies when they're calm, they're
Mhm.
much more likely to, and that goes for adults too, we're much
Right.
more likely to be able to access them when our emotions are elevated. So any sort of practices, breathing practices, or even just mindful walks, noticing, those types of things out in nature that calm us down. Practicing
Mhm.
that when we're calm can help when we're elevated.
That
So,
makes a lot of sense. And I think it can be so easy to just be like, okay, we got to take our deep breaths now because things are getting crazy. But it's like if we practice these things daily, I don't know why my mind keeps going to these sports clips. This clip of
mhm.
Kobe Bryant talking about 15 minutes every morning. That's what he does. And it creates that foundation for the day. He can always return to that. I experienced that for myself as being really helpful too. So I appreciate you dropping that in there and sounded
Sure.
like you threw in bedtime, right? Like bedtime
Hmm.
being a good time. Like, hey, can we deep
Yeah.
breathe ourselves to sleep or something to start the day even? Um,
Especially with our impulsive kiddos and our super anxious kiddos, or even slightly anxious kiddos. If we've got
mhm,
kids who tend towards anxiety or tend to have a lot of energy, those mindfulness
mhm,
practices like belly breathing, 4-7-8 breathing, kids love hot chocolate breathing, like all of those different types of things
mhm.
to just settle them down and sort of that wind down routine that can help them get to sleep, better because
Yeah.
sleep is a big, consideration too in terms of emotional regulation.
Huge, huge. Thank you so much, Kobe. So I feel like these basics can go a long way. Like if you cover validation and self-regulation and co-regulation, like you're adding, and then you add in those like daily practices, like you're crushing it truly. But like for you, Kobe, what's one thing that you'd like to like remind parents of that, if when things do get chaotic or a potential mistake has been made, what's something you'd like to throw out there?
So a potential mistake on the parents' part, because we do that, we're human, we are not
Mhm.
robots, and kids do not come with instruction manuals. So
Mhm.
we lose it from time to time. I
Mhm.
think the number one thing that I want parents to know, and is really heavily leaned on in positive discipline, is you can always repair, and really that you're modeling repair for them.
Mhm.
We want them to be able to repair mistakes they make. We need to make it okay. We need to show them how to do it. So modeling the repair might look like after the fact, taking time to calm yourself down and saying, you know what, I am so sorry. Mommy didn't use her strategies today. And I apologize. What do I need to do to make it okay for you? Right?
Mhm.
We want to, just like we teach the kids, we want to have them repair based on what the other person wants, what the person that they
Mhm.
harmed wants. And so we have to be willing to do the same thing. That can get really tricky because it can feel, if you're from a different paradigm, parenting paradigm, it can feel like giving up your power.
Mm.
But really, what it is creating that connection and permission for them
Mhm.
to do the same.
Yeah. That's
Right?
that that's it ties back to what you were talking about earlier with the whole point of this positive discipline parenting method being to create connection and to create empower the kids in that way and that help that create accountability. So I love that question that you threw in there. How can I make this okay for you?
Yeah.
It's giving
How
them
can I make it
power.
better? What
Yeah.
do you need? Yeah.
Right. What do you need? That question seems to be like really sticking with me in this one. What do you need?
Yeah.
And then that helps them to just sit and think with it and learn for themselves. What do I need right now?
Yeah.
Great invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also when kids make mistakes, the one of the taglines or one of the big concepts is connect before correct. So when a mistake has been made by a child, connecting with them about what was going on with them. First of all, calming yourself, because when
Mhm.
kids make mistakes, sometimes we get rattled by it or upset by it. Calming yourself first and then going in and connecting first. Man, this must be really hard for you. I see how upset you are that you made
Mhm.
this mistake, and then coming up with whatever consequence is going to happen because of that. And
Mhm.
hopefully they have been involved in that sort of thing beforehand. What kind of
Yeah.
consequences for different misbehaviors that can be handled in the family meeting? What are
Mhm.
we going to do if somebody breaks these family norms? And it's always done with kindness and firmness, right? It's
Mhm.
not, hopefully, we've done the work we need to do to regulate ourselves. So by the time we're coming to address the mistake, we're able to connect
Mhm.
with them and, proceed to the problem solving and consequence in a calm,
Mhm.
rational way.
Yeah, you've mentioned consequence a couple of times now, and I'm curious, like, what are some of the consequences you've heard of coming about in this parenting method, like through your studies, through your experience? Yeah, what
Yeah.
comes up?
So I think anything that makes sense for the family, I mean, logical consequences can be part of it. If you, refuse to get off the iPad for 10 minutes after your iPad time, you might lose, your iPad time for the next day. Something that
Mhm.
fits what happened.
Mhm.
So I think the idea is to stay away from those consequences that feel like punishment. It needs to be a logical consequence. Think about where we're going with our kids, what we want them to learn and know and be able to do in their future. If it's not teaching them that, maybe it shouldn't be a consequence. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So if they have not been responsible, then, coming up with maybe they need to not been responsible doing their chore on their own. Maybe they need
Mhm.
to set an alarm and have a parent sort of supervise instead of having that independence. And I really think it's
Mhm.
unique to the family and what they can come up with in terms of those
Yeah.
logical consequences. But a lot of times it's like, oh, well, you didn't take care of this privilege, you didn't take care of this responsibility, so you lose a privilege. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. But
That
it's agreed
makes
upon ahead of time. I think there's a line between consequence and punishment in terms of,
Mhm.
oh yeah, this makes sense to the child. I was involved in this. I didn't take care of this responsibility. I knew that if I didn't do that, I was going to lose this privilege. So,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
the involvement mostly
Yeah.
that changes it.
That makes sense. The involvement and also, yeah, the fact that it's happening beforehand, like it's very clear this is happening. It's not just going to blindside somebody. It's known. You mentioned also that it like fits um that it fits whatever happened. If it was iPad related, the consequence can be iPad related. If it was chore related, the consequence can be chore related. I'm curious how potentially it would be navigated if a kid is like, well, I want the consequence to be, you know, something that we might not think is at the level it needs to be. You
Yeah.
didn't come home when I said I wanted you to come home. I think the
Mhm.
consequence should be here. You're saying it's here. How uh, I feel like it will come back to some of the things that you've already discussed, but how to navigate something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think asking curiosity questions. So there's a whole deck of 52 tools that comes along with this parenting method, and you get to
Mhm.
try them all out. Asking curiosity questions. Well, why do you think that it should be this versus that?
Mhm.
And then sort of negotiating something in the middle, but it does need to make sense to the parent. It needs to be
Mhm.
safe, fair, respectful, sustainable,
Yeah.
reasonable,
Mhm.
right? All of those things. And if it's not, I'm sorry, like go back and try again.
Yeah.
So there can be some negotiation, especially with our older kiddos, there can be some negotiation there. They're able to reasonably do that negotiation, but also you've built that relationship so they get it.
Mhm.
You have that connection so they get it. Yeah, they'll still try to get away with things because that's what kids do.
Right.
But you can always say, because you have that relationship, nope, sorry, I got to go back to the drawing board. Not,
Yeah.
not reasonable, not sustainable,
Mhm.
doesn't fit the situation. I need something a little bit more. Um,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My mind is just going all types of ways because I'm really curious around this whole, the subtleties of it all. But at
Mhm.
the core of it, it seems so beautiful, like to be able to collaborate with your child, to be able to really create this cohesive vision for what life's looking like, navigating challenges together, connecting together. It just it truly seems beautiful. And the one thing
Yeah.
that came to mind for me as you're sharing that is, it seems like patience is like a huge like need in this
Mhm.
parenting method. Because as I'm thinking about it, it's like, okay, well, why is punishment like the go-to like power hierarchy? I think sometimes it could be parents are overwhelmed. It's like, it's this way because I said get in the car, like because it's things are moving really fast. So are there any um words of wisdom for just like navigating that when it can be like it's kind of fast?
Yeah. So I think, sitting down in a family meeting and saying, we're going to try something new. And it might
Mhm.
be bumpy, but
Mhm.
here's what we want it to look like eventually. We want things to be smoother for all of us. We want everybody to have a voice. We want everybody to feel good. And it's going to be bumpy sometimes.
Mhm.
So if there's a glitch in the plan and there's issues with getting out the door, you bring it to a family meeting. Everybody can write something down on the agenda.
Mhm.
If somebody has a problem with how much iPad time that they have, they want more, write it on the family agenda, talk it
Right.
out. So you
Mhm.
develop those solutions together as a family
Mhm.
based on the input of everybody. But again, you are the parent. So it
Right.
comes back down to what makes sense to the parent with the kid input, right?
Right.
It
Right.
can't be unsafe. It can't be
Yeah.
unreasonable. So within those parameters, let's work this out.
Mhm.
And so the parent would be like, okay, we're having trouble getting out the door on time. What's the problem? If you get down to the root of why
Mhm.
they're having a problem getting out, then you can problem solve together.
Boom.
Do we
Mhm.
need to get started 10 minutes earlier? Um, if there's a reason why, like, I don't really want to go to this place. Okay, well, how do we make it better for you having to go to this place? What can we
Right.
work out? And then sometimes it's making choices about what our kids are involved in. A lot of our
Mhm.
kids are overscheduled and there's that resistance getting out the door because they don't want to go.
Right.
And so what choices can we give them about the activities that they're involved in that can decrease the resistance and increase the cooperation,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. I feel like that word is key in all the things you're sharing, the cooperation, like just both parts cooperating together and working together to navigate the bumpiness or
Mhm.
the challenges. Um, you mentioned a couple of these, but this is kind of the last question I have on the docket for you today, Cobi, is like, what are some healthy habits or routines that parents can adopt to raise mentally healthy kids?
Yeah. So I mentioned it a little bit before. The number one thing I think is getting enough sleep, having healthy wind down routine, making sure, because if we think about it, when we're sleep deprived, how do we handle stress? For me, not very well.
Right.
And so if we are making sure our kids are paying attention to how they feel at the end of the day, settling in and doing some relaxation and mindfulness, getting to bed, getting enough sleep, healthy sleep, that's
Mhm.
the first thing. And then I think the overscheduling, I think, is one part too, like making sure that they're having choices about their activities, that they have downtime and free
Mhm.
play and creativity to learn those social skills in a more free range sort of,
Mhm.
atmosphere
Right.
without us necessarily interfering. They're trying to work it out themselves and creativity get to know themselves better and, just being able to kind of have a little autonomy or agency over the activities that they're doing. I think those two things can be helpful.
Mhm.
And then just resilience when things go wrong, because they do. How are we going to support them in bouncing back? How are we going to um, frame the situation or help them frame the situation that doesn't make them the victim, that empowers them to
Mhm.
um, see what they can do to bounce back from situations that are unexpected or unwanted. So I think that part, particularly for mentally healthy kids, if you struggle to bounce back from unwanted or unexpected things, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So those
Mhm.
resilience skills.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm glad that you threw that in there because I honestly, that was the last word of that question that I totally forgot to throw in there. So you're right on it, the resiliency piece. Cobi, thank you so much. I would love to keep going, and I want to, just respect your time and respect everybody's time because I know we are moving around, but um, I hope you guys walked away with as much as I did today. I am stoked that we had this conversation, Cobi. Is there a place where people can find you, online or otherwise?
Yeah, so a teacher friend and I are hoping to start our own podcast this summer. And so we are at Growth Minded Pod on Instagram. That's about the only place for right now, but we're hoping to grow that over the summer when we have a little more downtime.
Yeah, yeah, you guys are crushing it, but I'm glad you're, being mindful and conscious of your scheduling, just so you're practicing what you preach right here. So you're
Trying
not
real hard.
overwhelming yourself.
Yeah.
Um, Kobe, thank you once again. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. I hope you like this video today. Truly, feel free to share, like, subscribe, all those things. But once again, just thank you for tuning in. Kobe, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.